Hello. I would like to share with you, I'm broadcasting live from Tzfat, one of the holiest cities in Israel, on perhaps one of the holiest days or nights, which is Chai El, the 18th of El, the birthday of, fair to say, the two greatest Jewish masters that ever came to this world, amongst many, many masters, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, respectively, the founder of Hasidic Jewry, which has really permeated the entire Jewish culture and thinking and way of life, and through Jews and their influence in the world, permeated the world. And the one that was most responsible for taking his wisdom and making it practical and user-friendly, the Alter Rebbe. First, with a little story. 3 years before the Alter Rebbe was born, the Baal Shem Tov actually made a feast, and he said that in 3 years a new soul will come into the world. It will light up the world with the wisdom of God through the spreading of the Shulchan Aruch, the kind of Jewish law, as well as the wisdom of God through the mystical wisdom, and this will pave the way for the redemption. And I'm no scholar, but I am a rabbi. I've written about 40 books. I've written over 100,000 blogs. You can check it out at KabbalahWisdom.org, Amazon, some other places. Taught at university. And what I do want to say is something very, very universal, and something very, very simple. And that is that the Hasidic movement, before was called Hasidim, which means the pious ones, which was kind of a name given ironically by its opponents who saw them as very pious people. They were called the Freiliche, the happy ones. And happiness, according to Jewish mysticism, I think best summed up in the teaching of Reb Shlomo of Karlin. He said, happiness is not a biblical commandment. It doesn't say anywhere you have to be happy. It says don't kill, don't murder, give charity. It doesn't say you have to be happy. He says, but what happiness can cause, no commandment, no good deed can cause. And now you have to think about that statement. Being happy is more important than everything else in the Bible, all of goodness. And I'll explain why in a moment. And he said, what sadness isn't a sin. It doesn't say if you're sad, you're going to go to hell. God was sad, what do you want? But he says what sadness and depression can cause, no sin can cause. In order to understand why this is the case, you have to understand a little bit about human psychology. And it's something that's ironically Eastern, which a lot of the Eastern philosophy actually come originally from Abraham, who was one of the greatest Kabbalists and teachers of Jewish mysticism, without going into too much of that. But they say that he sent some of his sons to the East. And one of the fundamental ideas that ironically we see in both Jewish mysticism and Eastern philosophy is that there are three operating systems that we humans have. In fact, in a certain sense, all animals have them as well, just in different proportions. The first operating system is the mind. We have a mind, or I can think, which is very, in a way, uniquely human, because even though other animals may even have better mathematical abilities, bees can calculate distances to flowers and communicate them, ironically, better than supercomputers can, which is amazing. So the mathematical ability in that little bee brain is like better than a supercomputer, which is astronomically amazing. However, it doesn't have independent thinking. It doesn't say to itself, why am I a bee? Why am I doing what I'm doing? So it's really driven by instincts, whereas a human, as if you just want to look at it from kind of a Homo sapien or mammal perspective, we're the only mammal that has a prefrontal lobe, or independent thinking mind. And we can ask these curiosity questions, which animals don't do. We could also change our behavior based on what we think we should do, which is what makes us a human. If you think before you speak and do, and you act according to your convictions as opposed to the other way around, which is the way animals work, is that they have emotions. And emotion mostly is based on what is in it for me. And that, of course, is predicated on another very interesting concept, which is the concept of me in the first place. Who says you exist? So it's really an amazing thing. I had a little discussion with Rabbi Yossi Jacobs, one of the greatest rabbis in our time, and we both concluded an animal has to have an ego. In fact, there's a lady that taught an ape sign language. Very interesting. You can look at this on YouTube. The very first thing she said is he has a big ego. because you have to have a love for yourself. You have to have a sense of me to want to care about yourself. In fact, that's what depression is, where the person is basically ashamed of themselves or upset, and then they stop caring about themselves. So having this me and the self-love for me is a very, very important thing. However, it can get out of hand, and that's where things have to get balanced, and that's what, in a way, religion does, which is religion helps us say, okay, well, maybe I want to steal your, I don't know, Mercedes, but I won't do it because God says it's not right. And if you're just not doing it because you might go to jail, well, if you were the police, and in South Africa where I lived, police were 3 times as likely to commit a crime because the opportunity was better. So a person has to have a God and a moral sense, but most importantly, happiness is the most important thing. And the reason for that is very simple, is that if you have a self-love, it means you have a sense of self. Like we said, the me is very fundamentally, you have to know that there is a me. And then the me is compared to other me's. And then what happens is you have this idea of love. And love is where you are like me. And because you're like me, and that's what we find, that the more you're like me, for example, family member, if you say my wife or my husband, the more you give to the other because it's like giving to yourself. But unfortunately, what can happen in life is the reverse situation, which is that the person feels that things are unfair, that you are like me, and yet you have it better than me. And this is jealousy. And jealousy is very interesting. For the only of the 10 commandments that teach us an emotion is don't be jealous. From all the emotions, God doesn't even say love. He says don't be jealous. Why? Because all evil comes from jealousy. Because if somebody steals from someone else, okay, it makes sense. They want to steal the money back. They don't want to hurt the person. I was teaching in the yeshiva and the Talmudic academy that I teach in, and I was saying that, the idea of the greatest virus is not COVID, it's actually shame, because a person who feels ashamed of themselves, not depression, but repression, somebody else shamed them, then they feel, why should you feel good about yourself and I should feel bad? So then the mind starts creating these phantom problems in the other, or they may even be real problems, but enough that I should shame the person for being like that. And then this shame virus goes around, and people live in shame, and they cause others to live in shame. It's a very, very negative culture. I don't know if Russia has it. I mean, there's certainly a little bit of violence going on. Is it coming from jealousy? I don't know. But the point is that a shame, you certainly see it by the Arab cultures, and unfortunately they created terrorism. And shame is a very kind of this motive that shame goes back to, as I heard from a former terrorist, from the time that Ishmael unfortunately was kicked out of the house. So they felt the shame. And I've had shame before. I don't wish it on my worst enemy. It's a terrible feeling to hold. And it does cause this kind of jealousy. Well, when a person's happy, ironically, they go outside of themselves. So when you're unhappy, you're feeling yourself all the time. But when you're happy, you're outside of yourself. So I'm going to put a link to my book, Kabbalah Love from Fear to Love, how to become happy. That's the most important thing you can do for the world. Certainly for yourself and for the world. Learn how to be happy. Because when you are happy, you are bound to make others happy instead of the reverse. Thank you so much for watching. Today is the time to make a resolution that you'll look at this book, you'll do the exercises. I guarantee anybody, and I've had many, many people, millions of people have actually watched this video, guarantee anybody that actually reads the book and does the exercise, 100% guarantee you will be happy. It's foolproof. It saved my life. It's collected from literally thousands of years of Jewish mysticism, and it is simple. And good luck. I love you. Make yourself happy. The world needs it.